Hello guys, it's Cho-Z Achilles, the third part in the Reimagining Beyblade Burst series. Of course, focusing on Cho-Zs in this part. So my first two parts are done now. They're definitely the most simplistic. The first one was quite literally just an introduction to the series, and I feel like the second one gave a better idea of some of the stuff I wanted to do, but this one, there's definitely quite a bit more going on. It's more than just frames this time. There's still a lot of that here, since Cho-Zs had a lack of frames, so there will be a lot of those, but there are definitely a lot of bigger alterations and also even a couple unique evolutions that I have conceptualized here. And yeah, of course, as always, there aren't any actual like art pieces or like models here because I don't really know what I'm doing with either of those, so unfortunately it's just like the base concept. But I'll do my best to kind of explain and kind of compare to other parts to get an idea of what I would be doing here. So that out of the way, let's go ahead and start off with the first change for this part. So the first bay is, well, the first bay. Winning Valkyrie. Winning Valkyrie, I think is a pretty good one. I think it's a nice bay overall, but, you know, the driver's fine, the layer's fine, but the disc is kind of the problem here. I'm just going to say this right now, the 12 disc, they should have modified it a little bit to make sure that it didn't break other bays or damage them. Also make it heavier. I'm not here to talk about competitive stuff or exact things like weight, but I think for some of these discs in shows that I need to address that because they were way too light for no reason. 12, make it a bit heavier, at least like a few grams, and then you smooth the edges a little bit. But the new part here is a frame. It's actually an old frame, but I'm going to bring it back, which is a Vortex. This thing should have had Vortex. It's not a new frame, which kind of sucks as like a starting piece to a, I guess kind of sucks in a way, again, for a starting piece in a new season. That's what I was trying to get at, but I just don't think there's a need to make a new frame here since I think Vortex already works very well for Valkyrie, and I put this on the way I did not want to. But, yeah, it'd basically just be like this, which, in my eyes, is a significantly better bay already, just with this. Now, if you want to be, like, really specific and, like, color match this, make this, like, a little bit darker then, go for it, but for this video, I think that this works fine. So yeah, Winning Valkyrie gets Vortex, which I think would be just nice. And again, there will be a lot of frame adjustments in this video, but don't worry, I do have some genuinely better stuff. It's not going to be just like last time, so this is one of a few, but, you know, again, we'll get to some better stuff here pretty soon. Next up, we have Z Achilles. Z Achilles is a weird bay. Personally, I don't think it's, like, that bad. I think the layer and driver are fine. And I mean, this kind of needs to be the same driver. I mean, Extend, we had Extend Plus later. That can stay the same. The layer's fine. However, the disc, I don't agree with this disc choice at all. I think that 11, save this for a different bay. So we're going to take that away. And the disc I'm going to give it is 13. I think 13 should have been the starting disc for Z Achilles. Now, I just think the general shape, when you look at the layer and disc, I think this kind of works, honestly. Also, yes, 13, I'd make this a little bit heavier, but, like, it's not as important here. But yeah, I just think 13 works a lot better for Z Achilles, in my opinion, and also, in case you're wondering, like, any extra reasons, so of course, Iga, the owner of Achilles, was kind of, you know, he had, like, this whole dark arc and stuff, and, was kind of the most dynamic protagonist in that regard, kind of having that, you know, arc where he was, you know, not, I don't want to say, like, exactly, like, a villainous, but, you know, you kind of know what I mean if you've seen the series, but, like, I think something like 13 is sort of like an unlucky number. I just think kind of just generally that pairs nicely, kind of having a protagonist with kind of a dark side in a sense anyway. I mean, like, not really like that crazy, but still, like, it's something, right? So I think 13 kind of works there just with that motif. And then also frame, dagger, a golden dagger. Again, this isn't a new frame. I mean, technically it is, but, like, if you saw my previous part, you know I gave this to a Nemesis. So again, it's a reused frame, but I think it works here, and yes, I would keep this gold, actually, and doing this, we get, of course, 13 dagger. I think this looks cool. And there you go. Z Achilles, 13 dagger extend. I think this is a really cool looking bay. With kind of its proper parts, and yeah, it can kind of align, I guess, somewhat. But yeah, I mean, it's just a cool bay, I think. I think this would help Z Achilles to be a little bit more interesting overall, which is why I chose these parts. Next up, we have Emperor Forneus. So, while the frames haven't been new, I think the discs should have been. I don't think Zero is really the best choice. Like, it's a good disc, but I feel like they could have done something different here. So I'm going to keep the layer and driver the same, but for the disc, I'm going to swap out 0 for 11. This disc would have to be a lot heavier, for sure, but I kind of think that this works decently well. Again, make this heavier, and I think 11 on Emperor Forneus would be kind of nice. As far as a frame goes, this is probably going to be a bit of a hot take, but I'm going to say glaive. And yes, I'm keeping this kind of white. You could make this a lot of colors. You could make it black, green, gold, blue, silver. You could do a lot, but I kind of just like the way the white looks here, so I'm going to keep this white glaive on my kind of reconceptualized Emperor Forneus. But again, you could change this one up a bit. I'm just trying to get the point across for the parts. And when you put it together, there you go. Emperor Forneus 11 glaive yard. Again, I like how this white looks on the black with the green. It just looks cool in my opinion. Can change this if you want though for the color, but yeah. I just think a kind of heavier 11 would have been, I think, a pretty decent disc for Forneus. Again, especially if Achilles is going to have 13, that way we get all new discs. And I think for frames, I always just kind of felt like glaive's pretty neutral. I think it kind of works with the general shape here for Emperor Forneus, so I'm like, yeah, I think that one does work pretty well. So that's the original kind of starting lineup, the first three. Not the most interesting stuff, but just kind of my adjustments that I would personally make to them. So that's really all there is to these. Alright, next up we have a bay that I want to do a little bit more to. That's Bloody Longinus. I don't think it's much of a secret that this is by far the most uninteresting Longinus by far. I think things like Zwei, Rage, and Guilty kind of built nicely on one another as they kind of went along, and had a pretty good idea. Lost and Nightmare were both very interesting for their time. Bloody just kind of existed. So I'm going to tune it up a little bit. So first up, the 13 disc. Unfortunately, I don't really have anything to model a new disc after, but I would make a new disc here. It would not have 13. I would come up with the 9 disc. The 9 disc would be, of course, a little bit confusing because we have had a 9 disc before, but it was spelled out, using letters. This would be a number. Is it weird? Yes, but it kind of also bothered me that we just never actually had a 9 disc, even though we had like 8 and 10 for core discs, but whatever. I think it's fair though, because again, it is different, but also it's on Longinus. Lost Longinus was the one that had 9. Now Bloody Longinus would have 9, although it's a different 9. Again, it's weird, but I don't really think it's that big of a deal. How I'd model 9 though would basically just be 4 blades on one side, and then 5 slightly smaller blades on the other side. Kind of like a 5 situation a little bit. But yeah, you can maybe have the blades designed in kind of a 9 format, like there's a little bit of like a ring in kind of the center of the disc almost, with kind of the blades going outward as if it were, a 9, like with how it, looks kind of to go off of the number. That's kind of something that discs tend to do, so, well, core discs anyway that are numbered, so I think it would just kind of work nicely with that. But yeah, the 9 disc would be the new thing that I do, and then as far as a frame goes, I'm just going to put 13 back here just to have something. We're going to go with Omen, and yes, this is Turn, but Omen was a new disc that I came up with last episode. Basically, it's very similar to Turn, but it would be 9-bladed instead of 8-bladed. Also, it can't flip or anything. It just kind of looks like Turn, which is why I just put this on screen. And putting it together, I'd probably also make this a little bit darker to kind of match with the purple. But I don't have a purple Turn, I don't think, unless I somehow missed it, but yeah, this is just sort of a reference. If I can get this thing to go together, that'd be very helpful, but apparently I can't. There we go. Cannot do that on the tripod, apparently. So my idea for a combo would be Bloody Longinus, 9 Omen Jolt, and again, imagine this is like a darker purple, to match with the rest of Bloody Longinus. But yeah, I think it still looks fine like this, but again, just want to make sure that's known. But we're actually not done with this bay, because I would also change the layer a bit. This is a very boring layer design. I'd keep the gold dragon head in the center, but I'd reformat the contact points. I'd effectively cluster them, so there'd be kind of these parts I'd kind of fuse into one bigger part with two metal dragons right next to each other, and then kind of a longer, like, white piece here extended outward. And put these on each side. So it'd be more two-sided rather than four-sided, which I think would work much better. I think that pairs much better with the previous Longinus, and also would pair much better with things like Zwei, and eventually Rage and Guilty. I don't like this Longinus design at all, and I think, you know, kind of adding onto it, giving it a better disc in my opinion, also a frame, and just making the kind of Longinus layer actually feel more like a, well, Longinus in terms of design. I think this would help it out a lot to make it a better Longinus, and I still think that this isn't the craziest Longinus either, but I think it's a better one, for sure. And again, it just feels more like an actual evolution to Nightmare, because Bloody does not feel like a Nightmare evolution at all. I think that Nightmare still feels much better, so hopefully this at least helps out a little bit. Alright, next up is Crash Ragnarok. I promise we're going to skip some bays, and not every bay is going to have alterations, but there are a lot still. So, Crash Ragnarok, I feel like, is a really strange Ragnarok. I always liked kind of the layer with the metal stamina wings, and I always found 11 Reach to be somewhat awkward, but you know what? New character owned this one. I don't mind this Ragnarok being a little bit weird, so we're going to keep 11 Reach on it. But I'm going to change one thing, the driver. I don't like Wedge on this thing. In fact, I think there's a driver that would work perfectly, and this would actually, just based on the release times, would be a brand new driver at the time of release to this bay, and that is Eternal. Eternal initially released on Archer Hercules, but we're going to rewrite history and basically make it first release on Crash Ragnarok. This always just felt like a better Evolve to me in a lot of ways, and or at least like an alternate version, so we're going to keep it. And with that, adding it on, I'm going to keep this color from Cosmo Valkyrie as well. Here it is. Crash Ragnarok 11 Reach Eternal. This, to me, just works significantly better. You can maybe alter this to be like red, or even like a little bit more yellow or something, and maybe have this a little bit of a lighter orange, but still, this works fine enough. And yeah, I think Eternal was just a much better driver for a Cho-Z Ragnarok, in my opinion, with Crash Ragnarok. So, pretty simple choice, but again, this just works much better as a Ragnarok driver. Next bay, Hell Salamander. Hell Salamander's combo is actually perfectly fine. I have no problems with it here, except for the frame. Well, lack thereof, I guess. 12 operate I'm fine with, but as far as the frame goes, I'm actually going to go back to Omen, which I gave Longinus, because I just think that a, you know, kind of 9-bladed, left-oriented frame works very well for something like Hell Salamander. Just sort of with how it looks, and we're going to be using a turn, yet again, to kind of just show, or give a general idea anyway, to what this could look like. And if I could get this thing to stay on, there we go. It looks something like this. And yes, you could adjust the colors to match this a little bit better, but I think this is like pretty close. And with that, you would then have a frame on Hell Salamander, and I think this would look actually like pretty cool here. I like how this looks a lot. And again, maybe alter this color slightly, but I still think it looks very cool like this. Very simple change for Hell Salamander, but I do think it would be much, much better, again, if you got a frame, because I just don't like having core discs released without frames, so adding something on here I think would be pretty nice. Next up, we have Archer Hercules. Somewhat similar to Hell Salamander, I think this is a fun combo, 13 Eternal. Although none of these parts would be new. Eternal, obviously, would be, just based on the release window, would now be a reused part. But I would give this a frame, actually a brand new frame. It'd be called Quiver. Quiver, of course, because it kind of has a bow design here, but I'd kind of make the frame match the layer. It'd sort of be a two-sided frame with kind of this top part being, you know, again, kind of weirdly angled. You kind of got these two main points here. Somewhat comparable to something like Dagger in a way, but again, a little bit more to this shape rather than just being completely jagged. Although I would kind of keep a similar color to this gold tier, I just think it works pretty nicely. So just kind of give a base idea to what it might look like. Well, it'd be something like this. Archer Hercules, 13, Quiver Eternal. I think this looks really cool, actually. Maybe you can make it slightly different, or again, even change the color if you really want to, but I think this works fine. So again, just kind of have a frame modeled after the layer to some extent. I think that would work really nicely. And again, just adding a frame to a bay that kind of needed it. Next up, we have Revive Phoenix. Again, combo's fine, but it doesn't have a frame. The frame I'd come up with is called Zealot. It'd be very similar to Quiver in the sense of it effectively mirrors the shape of the layer. So you kind of have these two main points here, kind of a gap right here between them. I'd also make this a bit of a larger frame, just a little bit. It might make contact with bays when this piece is off as well. But yeah. Again, it'd just be kind of to pair nicely with Revive Phoenix. I think Revive Phoenix kind of deserved its own frame, to be honest. In terms of color, I'd make it very similar to this Gale frame I have here, which is orange. So just as kind of a general idea to what the color would look like, if you added this on, if I could do that, there we go. There you go, sort of a mocked version of Revive Phoenix 10 Zealot Friction, which I think looks very, very cool. I like the orange here a lot. And I think Zealot is a pretty solid name for this frame on something like Phoenix. So yeah, just adding a frame, but this one is definitely meant to be a little bit more specific, and also definitely on the larger side for frames. Maybe only being beaten out by like Expand. I just think it should be a little bit more unique, just a little bit, compared to other frames. Next up, we have Buster Xcalibur. Buster Xcalibur is mostly fine. I would give it a frame. I wouldn't make you jump through hoops of like buying the triple booster set just for the frame to add on to this thing. That was stupid. But I would give it a frame, and it would not be dagger. It would be the same color, so in terms of color schemes, this is correct. I would keep the gold frame here. But the actual frame itself would be different. I would not use dagger, nor would I use hit. I'd actually come up with a brand new frame called Exact. Exact would be very similar to hit, except I would make it much larger. I'd make this stick out maybe like here or something. It'd be maybe you could have like a little bit more of a base, so again it'd kind of go out further as well. But the idea would be to match up the sword even better than hit does, with like one dash in this case, with then pairing with the layer. But still, I think it'd be much more interesting. And I guess putting it in that kind of state, you can see that there's still like a ton of room here. I'd almost make it like come out almost to where the fully extended sword goes, like at least like here or so. But yeah. Now the reason why I'm calling it Exact is because I just think kind of having the 1 point would make a lot of sense to call it Exact. I think that just works. Also, with how Burst is and kind of EX words, they just like to use X, so you can just have it be the X frame. Because again, I think that just works. Especially for Excalibur, I think kind of X has always kind of been its thing to some extent. So having an X frame called Exact, I think works well. And having kind of a revised version of Hit, which I did give to Seek Excalibur in the last video, now having kind of a version of that that's even further kind of built on to match with the disc, which is kind of a revised version of 1. So I think it works well there. Kind of evolves the disc and frame together in a sense, and just works better with Excalibur, which is pretty nice. Alright, next up we have Hazard Kerbeus. This is a bit more of a fun one, honestly, so that's nice. I know we've been kind of on a string of just frames again recently, but finally have a more dynamic one to talk about. So there would be a frame added onto Hazard Kerbeus, which would be Jade. This is a frame that I gave Guardian Kerbeus last episode. Jade is sort of like Cross in a sense. I'd probably keep a similar color, maybe slightly darker, but still similar to this. I'd probably have the edges maybe a little bit more, kind of going inward slightly to kind of make a more limited shape, similar to Kaiser Kerbeus' disc Limited. Also, these edges here would be actual spikes, like the press driver, again, referencing Kaiser Kerbeus. That's what I came up with last episode, so I'll be keeping that for Hazard Kerbeus. So I get that on there. However, the driver would be swapped out with a brand new driver. I'd make a completely new driver. It'd be somewhat similar to Orbit, which I gave Guardian Kerbeus. However, it'd probably be like slightly taller, and also the ball would be slightly smaller. I tried to accommodate this by making sure it doesn't scrape as much, but that's still a little bit difficult. And at least make sure there's not like these edges that Orbit has, so that'd hopefully be an improvement. But the driver would be called Fission, which Fission, I'm not going to describe it, but basically I thought it'd be kind of funny if we had 2 free spinning balls. One inside the driver, and then the main one that you spin on. So the free spinning ball would be touching another free spinning ball inside the driver. This is very stupid, I'm going to say that right now, but I think it could be funny, which is important. So I decided to make just something that is really, really stupid, but also funny. So the pay would be Hazard Kerbeus, 7 Jade Fission, and would Fission be stupid? Yes, but I almost want to see someone make something like this just to see how it would work. But I think having 2 free spinning balls would be an interesting experiment, if nothing else. I don't think it'd be all that different than just kind of a slightly smaller and taller version of Orbit, realistically. But it'd still be fun to see. And I think the movement on it might be a little bit more dynamic than some other bays, so I thought it was at least a fun enough idea to try out and kind of expand Orbit in a different direction than what Wyvern did. I feel like this kind of helps to justify giving Orbit to Kerbeus since it was kind of always a Wyvern part, so it evolves in a different path, almost like how sort of like, you know, Valkyrie and Deathscyther both had Excel, although in my Reimagining series I gave it a different driver, well, for Deathscyther, but they're still similar enough, and then they just kind of go down their own paths, and with this, Orbit for Kerbeus can go down its own path, with Fission being much different, and again, I think it's kind of fun to do, and it'd be a pretty fun experiment. So Kerbeus would hopefully be a lot more memorable than the original version of Hazard actually was. Alright, next up we have Geist Fafnir. This is the simplest one of all. It did not release with a frame, but you could buy the upgrade set for the proof frame. It released on the same day as Geist Fafnir. Just don't have this and make the proof frame release on Geist Fafnir stock combo. That is all. That's literally all there is. It just should have been that from the start. I don't know why it wasn't. That's it. Alright, now we have one of the weirdest parts of the video. Left Apollos and right Artemis. These two are a mess. They have the Mugen drivers, which I'm fine keeping on here, but they should have had actual stock combos, so you can kind of swap them out for these for the stadium, or just kind of a pretty normal combo. So basically, as far as parts go, I don't have multiple, so I'm just going to use the stock combo here, as is, but, well, the parts I have anyway, because I'd have to recolor these, and there's no recolors for them in the ways that I want them to be recolored, so you basically have 2 sevens, 2 stars, and then 2 unite dashes. They'd be different colors though, so we'll get to that, but yeah. So it'd basically just be like the Duo Eclipse combo, except twice, and also Unite is now Unite Dash. And you put these on the bays as you would want to. Of course, like this. So now you'd have left Apollos, 7-star Unite Dash. Or you could do right Artemis, 7-star Unite Dash. And you'd have 2 of the combos, but they'd be different colors. You'd have basically a 7 that's painted black, and then one that's painted white. You'd have a meteor, well, not meteor, star, sorry. One kind of in this opaque black color like Eclipse had, well, the original Eclipse, and then also one in this, well, yeah, like this black, and then one white, and then for Unite Dash. One would basically just be like this, except with the red and the gold spring. Still just clear with the black rubber, though, for the most part. And then another one would be clear black with white rubber. So basically, I'd give this disc and frame combo, the all black, to Artemis, and then I'd give that kind of recolored, you know, black Unite Dash with the white rubber to Artemis as well. Apollos would have the new disc and frame that are just kind of all white with this driver, the clear white with a black rubber, which I think would work well just with the general ideas of these bays, kind of the sun and moon idea. Also, Unite Dash having some red on it isn't that bad because there's red on both of these layers, so even if the red does kind of appear a little bit, it works fine. When you merge these into Eclipse, you can then choose what you have, and you can kind of just do like the original Eclipse style. I guess this would more so be like the right Eclipse version, but if you use like the white parts here and then the this driver as well, not this driver, this disc with this driver, this is the right Eclipse version. With the other disc and other driver, like the recolors, all the new recolors basically like would be left Eclipse. So original versus new in terms of coloration. So that's how you could do it, and that's how kind of how you can make the combos and stuff. In my opinion, just a little bit more unique, basically. And yes, it'd still be using these combos from Duo Eclipse, but I feel like it'd be much cooler. And you could then play around with kind of the color design as well, which I think would be kind of fun. And just having these options would just be so nice. It would make these bays just feel way better, honestly. It just sucks that they were kind of relegated to these other drivers here that were really just like, they were cool, but they just work with the stadium, and it just sort of ended up making these bays feel not really like their own bays in a lot of ways. So this would kind of help to fix that, which would be great. So you could have the stadium stuff, but also 2 actual functional bays. Alright, we have another simple one here, Cho-Z Spriggan. I'd have to keep the combo the same, honestly. I think this is fine. But I'd actually add rubber onto the layer, because I feel like Spriggan should have always kept rubber. I'd actually make it red this time, and I put it on the edges of this part here. So, literally just some rubber on the edges, of the red edges anyway, of Cho-Z Spriggan. That's literally all I would do to it. I think it's a pretty simple change, but I think it'd make it much, much better, and kind of just keep the rubber on Spriggan. I don't think there's ever a need to get rid of it on any of the evolutions post-Requiem, so just keep it, honestly. That's really all. Next up, we got Cho-Z Achilles. Cho-Z Achilles is a weird bay. I don't dislike this bay, I actually like it a lot, but I always found it to just really suffer from not having a frame, because I'm just going to be honest, this looks very awkward. As far as the frame goes, there's actually only 1 letter left. Well, this was a December release, and the other December release has Expand, which technically this is before Expand, if we're being technical about it, just based on the B numbers, but whatever. But with this and Expand, these are actually the last 2 frames, and with a new frame for this bay, it actually have to be a Y frame, and that completes the alphabet. I wasn't actually intending to do this, but yeah, throughout my Reimagining series, I inadvertently finished the alphabet. Did not mean to do that, but it happened. So, this frame I would call Yearn. I just think that the name Yearn really works kind of with Achilles. Again, the motif having 13. And I feel like once Aya kind of figures things out, and especially when you see with like Cho-Z Achilles and stuff, I think the idea of the frame being called Yearn just makes sense. I'd probably make this like an opaque blue, so I'm using this frame here, since it kind of works. I'd make it matching, I'd basically just make it match this a lot better. But this is the closest thing I have. It'd be an opaque blue frame. And it would be 2-sided, kind of match up with the swords here a little bit. But this frame would actually be special. Like the December release before it, I would actually give it a special property. Last time we had Key. Key was a flippable frame for Spriggan Requiem. This time, I am going to be giving it metal. Not a lot of metal, though. Just a little bit of metal on the 2 inner parts of the kind of blades that would be matching these blades here. It wouldn't be a lot of metal at all. It'd probably be about a 5-gram frame, but a 5-gram frame, that's pretty heavy for a frame still. It's not, like, unreasonably heavy, but it's definitely a heavy frame, and that's kind of what I'd want to do here. Give it a special frame, because I think Achilles kind of would deserve something like that. And here's kind of what the idea of something like Cho-Z Achilles 00 Yearn Dimension would look like, which I think would be, if color matched correctly, would be way cooler. You'd have like the red, the blue, this yellow, then more blue, then more red. I think it looks very cool, and again, this would also be a bit of a larger frame, just a little bit bigger, but still just to make sure that there's enough room for the metal to properly be in there. So, again, I think something like this would work very well, and giving it metal to make it kind of one last dynamic frame would be very cool, especially for a release like Cho-Z Achilles. Alright, next up we have Air Knight. Air Knight is almost fine, but I don't agree with the disc choice of 12. This always just did not feel like a good stamina disc to me. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this, and we're going to swap it out for 10. I just think 10 works way better here. 10 just makes sense for Air Knight in my opinion. So we're going to give it 10, which again I think works much nicer here. And that's basically it. Air Knight, 10 Expand Eternal. There you go. I just think that this disc works a lot better for kind of a stamina bay. Much better than 12 anyway. And even though I want to fix up 12 to make it, again, a bit heavier and not break bays without a frame on it, I just think that 10 works the best for Knight. So we're going to give it 10, and I think that that just works well. Alright, and now we have Dead Phoenix. The layer here is perfectly fine. I have no qualms with Dead Phoenix being as is. I would almost want to make metal on the center part of the layer to kind of match Revive Phoenix, and then there's no, like, Perfect Phoenix, I guess, so you could do that, but in this video, I guess I'll just say no to that, but I wouldn't mind if it happened. Because that does kind of just invalidate Revive at that point, so again, I understand not doing that, so we'll keep that out of here. However, Zero Atomic never belonged here. I know that these are just kind of placeholder parts, but personally, just give it an actual combo if you're going to do that anyway, if you're going to release an entire booster. So we're going to keep the Revive Phoenix parts of 10 and Friction, but I won't be bringing back the Zealot frame this time. I'll actually be giving it Turn. This is actually the specific Turn from Dead Hades, the same red one. And I feel like because it was kind of, merged with Dead Hades in a sense anyway. Revive Phoenix, Dead Hades, now you have Dead Phoenix, so I personally think that it just works. It does just kind of work very nicely. And just the red in general, I think, just looks good on Dead as well, so there's also that. And it definitely shows a little bit more of a Hades in there. Anyway, here's the full combo. Dead Phoenix, 10 Turn Friction. And again, I just think that the turn frame, it just looks good here. And this actually feels like a proper Dead Phoenix release right here. And it looks very cool as well. I really like how this red frame actually looks on this bay. It's really nice, so there you go. An actual Dead Phoenix release. That's not just like random parts that you have to like make your own stuff out of. And this is actually the final bay of kind of reimagining part of this video where I'm, redoing some of the bays, but there's of course new bays. This is the first time I'm actually going to be doing this, because I didn't really have to do this for the previous two parts, but this one I will actually be doing some genuine reimaginings here. Like, not reimaginings, but just brand new bays. So I have two brand new concepts for bays that I want to share, just kind of what I want to do with them. So I guess we'll go ahead and get into that. Alright, so the first new bay I'd come up with is Gloom Deathscyther 9 Omen Reap. So, I've already talked about 9 and Omen. These are actually the disc and frame I used for Bloody Longinus. 9, of course, being kind of a jagged frame that is somewhat left-oriented, so I think using that on Deathscyther makes sense. Also, Omen's also kind of left-oriented. I think that kind of works for something like Deathscyther, being kind of opposite. Also, for the layer, I guess just basing this off of Killer Deathscyther, kind of, it'd be kind of a Cho-Z version of this. You'd have some metal probably underneath here, kind of maybe expand this part of it. The scythe I'd also make bigger, and I'd also have this piece be larger, this blue piece here. It'd have to be coated with plastic, but the actual piece would be metal inside anyway. Just with a plastic coating on the edges so it doesn't break bays. And also larger. I'd also make it to where this kind of piece that moves around, it's actually offset to where it kind of sticks outward a little bit more, so like this actually has a bit more of a function to where it would kind of be like this normally, but when it pushes back, this piece would kind of come outward a little bit more. So there is a bit more of merit to the double strike, plus it would have kind of a, well, metal behind the contact point, which would kind of make it a much stronger attack, both having a more outward contact point, but also just having that general, metal there. It'd make it much, much stronger, so yeah. As far as the driver goes, it was a new driver that I, of course, just mentioned, Reap. Reap would basically just be like a rubber version of Jaggy. Look a lot like Hunter, but again, it'd be kind of a Jaggy-like pattern, but with this like blue rubber. It's pretty basic, I think. So, I mean, again, not like a difficult idea there. As far as color scheme goes for like the frame, I'd keep it the same as this, and yeah, it'd just be Omen, but in this color that Vortex had for Killer Deathscyther, which of course I did replace with Axe in my video for Killer Deathscyther for God, but same color scheme though, so it doesn't really matter with that. But yeah, that's kind of my Deathscyther concept, just kind of a Cho-Z version of Killer Deathscyther in some ways, although with the Longinus disc and frame, a rubber Jaggy effectively, and then again, the layer's just beefed up to be, of course, competitive with Cho-Z stuff, and also making the kind of double strike idea that Killer Deathscyther had actually functional, which I think would be a fair evolution for a Cho-Z Deathscyther, in my opinion anyway. And the last new bay is actually going to be Gale Wyvern 14 Key Atomic. So we are going to be reusing Key and Atomic. Atomic would be, of course, just what Tornado Wyvern had, although I would actually make it closer to the Wyvern and Wild Wyvern driver color schemes, where it's kind of that turquoise color. And then for this, I'd keep a purple ring for Atomic, though, but the base driver would no longer be lime green, though, so bit of a difference there. But as far as Key goes, I did come up with Key in my last video with Spriggan Requiem's frame. I mentioned it earlier as well. Somewhat similar to Lift, except a little bit more elongated. Also, it'd kind of go inward more. So when you have the mode, you could either have it, kind of the outward piece going upwards to the towards the layer, or kind of having the outward piece going down towards the stadium. Depends on what you want. It's kind of like Boost Disc 145 from Metal Fight in a sense, like sort of with how that'd work, or even closer would be like Switch Attack 165 from also Metal Fight 0G in particular. I don't know why I always feel like 0G is just so disconnected, but anyway, enough of that. So that's just what Key is. It's just like a flippable frame that is a little bit weird, but again, I think it just works nicely, kind of just based on the general shape, because again, kind of having that somewhat cone shape, a little bit, not cone shape, but just kind of that general, kind of outward, skirt shape in a sense. It's kind of the best way I could describe it. Just based on Wyvern's old discs, armed and vertical, I think a frame like that would work very well on a new Wyvern. Outside of that, 14, that's a new disc. So 14, it'd be very similar to something like 0 and 11. Basically, imagine something like 11, but with kind of the general, patterns and just weight of 0. But you still kind of have this, two-sided idea here, rather than 0 being a bit more even, so just kind of a mix of these two in a sense. As far as the actual layer goes, Gale Wyvern, I'd basically have this, central plastic piece be a little bit more rounded, and a bit smaller as well. Also, I'd have metal kind of around the edges here, and I guess this wouldn't really be smaller, it's more that this piece would just be, the free spinning piece would be bigger, but it'd be about the same size. I'd have some metal on the outer part of this as well, somewhat like Emperor Forneus' metal distribution. And, yeah, it'd be a similar color scheme. I would actually make the key frame would be a lime green, so kind of swapping these parts around a little bit in some ways, and, yeah, this layer would be kind of the same color scheme as Tornado Wyvern, and this plastic piece would be much bigger, same color, but that's kind of what would be a larger piece on the layer, rather than the kind of central part becoming larger. It's just that this piece would become larger. Not by a ton, I would say maybe 110% the size, so these blades would just kind of be out to here or so, and the inner part would actually kind of be flush with the, kind of the furthest parts of the free spinning pieces would be flush with this main piece here, so it'd pretty much be relying almost entirely on the free spin here, which I think would be kind of cool, honestly. I like that idea, so that's what we're going to go with, and that is Gale Wyvern. At least kind of a look at how it would function and what it would do. It's a little bit rough not having anything to work off of here outside of just my brain trying to use any parts I can to describe it, but that's basically what I have to do here, so that's just, well, yeah, I mean, that's just what I have to do, so yeah. But that is the last of the two concepts here. I will have more next video, but that's just kind of it for the brand new concepts this time. At least I was able to introduce the idea of making up my own base this time, which was nice to do. So, there you have it, my entire reimagining of Cho-Zets. I think this was a much more interesting video overall compared to the previous two episodes, but I think there's still a lot of room. I think a lot of this was definitely still complaining about frames, but we don't really have to do that anymore. That's kind of done now with GT, because all of the base with frames, or well, with core discs, did have frames, so my complaining is kind of done with that now, which is nice, because I'm sure if you watched this part and the last part, you've probably been sick of that, so that's basically done with. Anything after this is now going to be a bit more dynamic, so I kind of like that, and I'm actually pretty excited for the next one. It's not as, like, it's not, like, much crazier in terms of scope, but there is, I still think it's more interesting than this one, and then after that, once we get to Sparking and then, like, DB, those two are going to be insane, but, for this one, I think, again, it was nicer to at least be able to experiment a little bit more with some parts. I think, like, the Hazard Kerbeus and, like, the, you know, left-right eclipse stuff was pretty fun, and then also, like, actually being able to conceptualize my own unique evolutions this time, that was pretty fun, and there's going to be a lot more of that coming up, so I'm pretty excited for it, so yeah. Overall, I think that this episode has been much, much better than the last two. Those two, I'm not going to lie, were a little bit boring, so this one I hope was better. Let me know what your thoughts, if you have any thoughts anyway, if you watch this point. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I'm assuming quite long, and it's only going to get worse with later parts. So yeah, I think that's basically everything for this video. It's all of the sort of, I guess, you know, fixes, quote-unquote, or new ideas I had for Cho-Zets. So anyways, that's all for this video. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.